The Omega Beam. Full power.
Welcome to the Omega Beam number 198. I'm your host, Oren Merton. You've heard of the game Dungeons & Dragons, a role-playing game set in an epic fantasy world of knights and magic and monsters. Given how popular fantasy fiction like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and The Witcher have been on the big and small screen, it's no surprise that Hasbro has licensed D&D for a real big-budget tentpole movie. As fans of both fantasy fiction and the game of D&D, you knew that we were going to cover Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. So we start spoiler-free before going more in depth, and we give you spoiler warnings so you know in advance. So let's dive in. I am here with Golden to talk about the new movie Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. So I figured I would start the non-spoiler section with like a little bit of an interview with you. So do you play the game of Dungeons & Dragons?
Yes, we play the Forgotten Realms D&D mainly. What's interesting is Friday used to be our date night before the stay at home. We'd go to dinner, see a movie, then the stay at home occurred, then kids occurred, and our date night changed to playing D&D online.
Yeah.
On Friday nights.
With a group of great people.
Yes. We really enjoy the group of people that we play with.
Yeah. So my second question is, does one need to know anything at all about Dungeons & Dragons to enjoy this movie?
I think it helps, but I don't think it's necessary if you just like fantasy movies.
Yeah. I think the movie does a really good job of dumping you in the middle of a living, fantastic world. It doesn't beat you over the head with info dumping all the time. This is this, this is this, this is this.
I think the problem that the movie a long time ago with Thora Birch, that it didn't take itself as seriously. It didn't try to be a good movie. It just tried to have fun. Mm-hmm. And I think this one hit all the check boxes. Yeah. It's like, okay, we want this to be fun. We want it to have some humor. We want it to have some heart. We want it to have a plot. We want, multi-depth characters. And it's just like they went down the list and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that we make a good movie, and it's just going to be in Forgotten Realms.
Right, that our fictional world that we're pulling from, instead of it being from a novel, it happens to be from a game. But if you don't play the game, that's okay, because the point of the movie is that if it's going to be a good movie, it's going to have to get you up to speed with what you need to know, and at the same time not beat you over the head with things that you don't need to know. So it's not a movie that is just for people who play the game. It's a movie for people who like action, comedy, fantasy. And if you happen to play D&D, you're going to get a lot more Easter eggs and everything else out of it. And I am thrilled as a moviegoer. I am thrilled as a fan of fantasy movies. And I'm thrilled as a player of this game since I was a kid that this is the movie that is that good. The director, the actors, the writers take it seriously, but not too seriously. When they do make fun of it, they're not making fun of the material. They're making fun of the situation the characters are in. I was comparing this to some of the Marvel movies. And I love so many Marvel movies. We've talked about them on this podcast. But they have gotten into this almost boring routine where they always make fun of the same comic booky things. Like, they're embarrassed by it. It's like they always make fun. Somebody is always making fun of Doctor Strange's name. That it's just silly to have a character named Doctor Strange. But we know that. It's comic booky. Just deal with it and go with it. The joke was fun the first time. The 9th time, it wasn't quite as fun. In this movie, there's lots of quips. I mean, if you've seen the trailer, there's lots of quips. But none of them are, ha ha ha, we know the material is stupid. No, they love the material. The humor and the quips are the kind of quips that the characters in the scenario would make. None of it feels ham-fisted. And for those who play the game, there's an extra sort of meta level of humor because those are very often the kind of jokes that we would make at the table and the kind of mistakes that we would make at the table. And it's fun. It's really, really fun. And I think both you and I agree that one of the big surprises in the movie was how much heart it had.
Yes.
I mean, I am not ashamed to admit that I teared up at parts of it. And not just because it's a game I like. I mean, that has nothing to do with it. This is just, they're telling a story. And I think one of the reasons, the two reasons I think the moments of heart hit so true and so hard is, number one, because it is a quippy movie. You're not really thinking that there's going to be these big emotional impacts to it. And number two, they all feel earned. None of them feel like they were simply throwing in an emotional moment because, oh, we need one at this point in the movie.
I mean, the things that they threw in are a lot of just little Easter eggs that are fun for people that actually know the game and have played the game, but people that don't can still just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because they can get to know these characters.
Exactly. I mean, to give you one example of what she was talking about from the trailer, there's a moment our heroes look like they're being chased by a giant panther that has
Displacer Beast, yeah.
2 tentacles on it. And to escape it, they jump into what looks like this giant ball of jelly. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know anything. They don't stop the movie.
They show you just someone else going in first, and they know that, so you know it's dangerous.
Right, exactly. They show, they don't tell. They never
They don't need to stop and say, oh, that's a gelatinous cube. You can't go in there because then you'll die.
Yeah, I mean, they just let you see what happens. And they never give you the name because who cares? That's something that D&D players know. You don't need to know.
They give you the name of the dragon.
They give you the name of the dragon.
Yes, there is a dragon. Yeah, I mean, I don't really think that that's a spoiler because if you're watching a D&D movie, you kind of think that there's probably there's going to be a dragon.
Right, there's probably going to be locations that are a little bit cavern/dungeon-like, and there's probably going to be a dragon.
And they did a good job of just introducing someone who's not familiar with Forgotten Realms of the game to different aspects, the Underdark, the different towns, different places. They make references to some well-known cities in Forgotten Realms so that you know it is Forgotten Realms if you play D&D.
Yep.
And if you're more familiar with it, people know like what the prison's name is. They know where this is located. They know where that's located, and they can start to figure that part out.
Right.
Which is kind of fun. I mean, from the preview, what I thought was going to happen is that, our heroes steal something that they shouldn't have, and now they need to go get that thing back. That's the impression I got from the preview. When in fact, yes, something is stolen, but from there on out, it's not quite as cut and dry as that.
Right. But I think that's good. I love it when trailers don't give you the movie, they don't give the movie away. And one of the things I liked, I thought the trailers were incredibly good, incredibly fun. But
there was probably a lot of outcry about, wait a minute, Druid can't be an owlbear?
Yeah. That's inside baseball for those who play the game. I liked the fact that the trailer didn't give the movie away. And I like the fact that, the trailer's very quippy and action-packed and fun, but it did not give away all the good jokes, and it did not give away all the big action scenes. So I like that they kept parts of the movie to be experienced in the theater.
Honestly, one of my favorite gags in the movie comes towards the very beginning with Jonathan.
Right.
Yeah, that's all I'm going to say, so that's not spoiler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm going to keep it spoiler-free for this part. And even in the spoiler part, I don't want to give too much away just because it's so good. But speaking of Jonathan, that's a wonderful segue. So the character she mentioned, Jonathan, is a in-world character named an Aarakocra. And they are sort of eagle people. They're flying humanoids, but feathered and beaked, and they don't necessarily look like people. And the Aarakocra looked absolutely amazing. And at another point in the movie, there's other inhuman races from D&D, and they look also equally fantastic. The dragon looks fantastic. In fact, we were just on a conversation with some of our gaming group, a couple of whom said they thought this was the very best dragon they've ever seen represented in film.
And I think part of it is not what you'd expect from a dragon.
Yeah, part of it is that. I would agree with that. But what I was going to point out is that, yes, we have reached a point in technology where CG is great. But we all know that when it's physical, when it's on the screen, when it's in the space, it just looks more 3D. It looks more real. You get a more realistic performance out of the actors because they're responding to the thing and not a tiny tennis ball with a dot on it on a pole. And all of those effects, there's a lot of CG in this movie, of course. I mean, that goes without saying. But all those kind of creature effects and everything else, all real, all animatronics. They're physical. They're interacting with physical creatures. And that's the kind of care, well, and the kind of budget. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, this was a $150 million movie. I mean, they had the money. But it's there on the screen. The effects are great. And not just in these days you expect great from tentpole sci-fi fantasy movies, but great in the way that they took extra care to really make it look great in world. The music was really good too. I remember at various points thinking the soundtrack, even though it was a little bit more orchestral and things, it was almost Daft Punky. Parts of it kind of gave me the Tron Legacy vibe, which I thought...
I think there was one part that did also for me, but I can't speak to where it was.
And I thought that fit like really, really well with the action and the momentum and everything else. And yet for all the action, for all the special effects, they still let the moments, the more emotional beats, have time to breathe. You know, there's one part we won't give away. If you've not been reading anything, I will tell you nothing. If you have, then you probably have heard about a cameo. But there's a moment where everything kind of stops for two characters to have a conversation. And yeah, there's some humor there based on the situation, but they really let it breathe. They give them time, and it's a surprisingly heartfelt moment. And when that moment is over, and our heroine, who's one of the people involved, gets back on her horse, there's another heartfelt moment with her friend, Ed, Chris Pine, the bard, where which just kind of helps to re-solidify their deep understanding of each other as people and how he's there for her as a friend. And I think it's those character beats.
Well, he's not her type anyway.
Well, he's not, but their relationship is not based on that, which is great. I mean, it's wonderful to have an action movie where the lead male and female are not together because they're, great sexual tension. And
they laugh when it's suggested that they're together.
I mean, they're really good friends.
So I think that we've just about covered everything. So we're going to head into spoiler section. I'm going to start off by thanking you for, in the middle of the movie, telling me to look for, at a certain point in the arena, the
let's do
characters
do the 1, 2, 3 thing, though. Spoilers 1, 2, 3. Okay. I feel like I've done my duty for King and Country now.
So heading into the arena, you told me, there's the characters from the Dungeons and Dragons animated.
Right.
movie.
There was an animated cartoon of Dungeons and Dragons that only lasted a year or two back in the 1980s.
And they're literally listed on IMDb as Bobby, Diana, Eric, Sheila, Presto, and Hank.
Yeah, they are the cast.
So I thought that was just a really nice little flavorful There was nothing that had to be really big about it.
Yeah.
They just threw those characters in. But now I feel bad because, I hope that they survived.
I think they did survive. And I think they did survive because our heroes basically defeated the game before they could kill the people, in where they were.
But they were in there still.
They were in there, but I think they were just let out at that point.
So hopefully.
Yeah, that was a fun Easter egg. There's so many fun Easter eggs. There's so many Easter eggs that if you're a player, I read an interview with the co-writers and co-directors where they were talking about how, like, there's a gag that's in one of the trailers of the Speak with Dead spell being used badly. And they said, that happened at our table. We've done that. I've seen other people say, this really felt like a short campaign that lasted X number of sessions. And I think the fact that they could do that they could please people who like the game, who are in some cases, I'd say, more critical viewers, because like you were pointing out in the spoiler-free section, the druid character shape changes, wild shapes, which is a D&D thing, into an owlbear, which is a creature that in the game druids cannot wild shape into.
It's a monster, and druids can only shape change into creatures.
Yeah. So the directors, writers, the two directors also co-wrote it with someone else. They said flat out, yeah, we know, but we just thought it would be really cool.
Oh, it is really cool, and I'll totally take it.
Yeah, so they said ultimately, there's a lot of people who play the game like we do. When I ran a campaign, the number one rule at my table is, quote, the rule of cool, meaning I don't care what the rules are. If somebody wants to do something that would just be awesome, we're going to find a way to make it work, because ultimately it's not about rules, it's about fun. It's about sitting down with people that you like, or people that you've just met, if it's a brand new game, and having fun. And I love that attitude that the directors had, because it is a very D&D-ish attitude, as well as made for a better movie. Because you wouldn't want a movie that required you to know the rules of D&D. I mean, I always like to talk about the Rotten Tomatoes and things like that. So
what's interesting is that the Rotten Tomatoes is really good. The IMDb is only at like 76%.
Interesting. But yeah, Rotten Tomatoes, the critics, 211 critics who've reviewed it, the average is a 91% favorable. Of the audience, it's like a 93% favorable. Cinema Score, which is another aggregator, gave it an A-. The movie has done better than anticipated. It was apparently estimated for like a $30 million opening in the U.S. domestically, but in fact it's over $38 million now.
Which is good, because we went to an earlier showing on a Saturday.
Right.
And the theater wasn't too full. I know a friend of mine posted that his son sat in seat D20.
But yeah,
so
we did not.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, we had to go to an earlier, we could get, somebody to watch our kids at this hour show. But it was
very, very appreciative. This is actually the first time that since we've had both kids at home, that we've been able to go see a movie.
Yeah, without any kids.
And
absolutely.
we wanted to make sure that if we were going to do that it was a good movie.
Right, that it would be a good film, and this one was better than we thought, even though we thought it would be good. So it's made, I think, worldwide, because it's number one in the UK as well. I think it's number one in Canada. It's made over 71 million so far worldwide. It's number one in America, number one in the UK, I think number one in Canada. So it's clearly a movie that's doing well, and because of the positive word of mouth and the positive reviews, it should have some legs and do very well.
I would just like to amend something that, yes, druids later can turn into elementals as well, but I don't want anyone messaging, but you didn't say this.
Yeah. So I think that, like we were talking about, it had a lot more heart, that these were incredibly well acted characters. Nobody phoned it in. Everybody was very present, played their characters incredibly well, enjoyed them. It's like they took it seriously, but not too seriously. They enjoyed the characters. They were in their characters, but at the same time, they could have fun with it as well. And they weren't necessarily playing to type, which I think is fantastic.
I know that we spoke with one criticism is that a bard can do so much more, and he was kind of relegated to just hitting with the lute, singing a song, thinking out the strategy. The special effects were really well done.
Yeah.
The movie moves at a very good pace.
Right.
It's not constantly hurried. It has its slower movements when it's needed.
Right.
I just think it hit all the marks.
Yeah. And as a player,
not to say it's the best movie ever. It's just it did exactly what it needed to do to be a successful movie.
Exactly. It was and successful in every sense. Successful in the sense that it's obviously making money, but successful in the sense that they made a quality film. And the movie is just a really fun fantasy action film if you like fun fantasy action. And if you do see it, you will be rewarded with characters that are deeper than you think they'll be, and with moments that are more emotional than you think they'd be. You know what the stakes are. A good story always has stakes. The plot, it's very well plotted. You know what the stakes are. And everybody grows. Everybody has a little arc. They start one way and they end better.
It's a fun ride.
Well, thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/198. If you liked this episode, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Your reviews help people who like this stuff find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.
The Omega Beam. The Omega Beam. Full stop.